Welcome to Hey, Great Shot. This is the Great Shot Podcast, a Cracked Racquets and Tennis Channel Podcast Network production. My name is Alex Gruskin. On today's show, we have our third edition of The Deciding Point, our weekly recap of everything happening across the Division I college tennis world. Of course, exciting times for college tennis fans. The Division I Women's National Indoor Championships coming up this weekend. Our Cracked Racquets team so fortunate to be able to broadcast all of the action happening in Madison. You'll be able to follow all 4 days of the event here on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. I am so thrilled to be joined by my friend, my sensei, Mike Cation, on the broadcast as well. We'll have super producer Daniel Westoff on the ones and twos. It's going to be a fantastic weekend. We look forward to having all of you listeners join us throughout the course of the action. But of course, before we get there, we got to recap the last week in Division I college tennis. Of course, there were so many matches happening across the country. And joining me on today's show, as he does each and every week, to help me sift through all of that action, help us talk about our latest edition of the Cracked Racquets Top 10 poll, is a man you know best as your co-favorite writer on our website, crackedrackets.com, founder of the No Ad, No Problem blog, a known personality, not curmudgeon, on tennis Twitter. Of course, it is our friend, John J. Parsons. Jay, hey, great shot. Welcome back to the show. You excited for the National Indoors?
As evidenced by my background, I'm sitting here in Wisconsin, in Madison, ready to go. I'm excited to watch you and Mike Cation on the call. I'll be peppering y'all with chats on the live stream, so I'm really looking forward to that. And glad I got a new title. I like personality better, although I did really try and lean into your title this past weekend. I thought, I would just lean into it, give you all you want. But yeah, it was a great weekend, and I'm looking forward to indoors.
You doubled down on curmudgeon. There was no doubt about that. And, I saw the Payers and Players tweet. It felt like a shot, despite the no offense to CR. Nevertheless, we are so excited and so grateful, of course, to our friends at the ITA for the opportunity to broadcast this national indoors. And of course, we'll be red zoning our coverage. We'll jump from court to court throughout the course of a match, be able to have all of you listeners follow the momentum, follow the action as it unfolds. We were so excited to launch our split screen function yesterday in the Baylor, Texas showdown. That went seamlessly. And of course, you give super producer Westoff 4 more days to work it all out. Again, we are so excited for that broadcast. But of course, before we get to that, we got to get to today's show. And our plan for today's show is to name our most impressive teams from the past week of Division I women's college tennis results. We're also going to speak with the head coach of our most impressive team of the week. Some of you may have seen the preview. That, of course, this week is NC State women's tennis head coach Simon Earnshaw. Will then, of course, offer our Cracked Racquets Week 3 Top 10 poll. Jay and myself ranking our top 10 teams. We average those two metrics together, come up with our Cracked Racquets Top 10. We're going to offer our instant reactions to the ITA National Indoor Draw. Of course, Jay and I are going to break that down on a separate show later this week, because why do in one show what you can do in two? So we will get back to a full breakdown of that action. But again, we're going to offer our brief synopsis here on today's show. Of course, before we get to any of that, I got to thank our friends at SwingVision. And we are so thankful and so excited to be partnered with SwingVision. We think they are the future in all things tennis. And it's really simple, folks. You're going to download the SwingVision app. It's going to be worthwhile. Here's why. Now, each and every time you play, you're going to be able to document your progress on court. You're going to be able to watch the film, break it down, forehands, backhands, serves. What did you do well? What do you need to improve on? You can learn all of that information in one app. Of course, if you want to learn even more about SwingVision, just click on the link in the description of this show. It'll take you to their website. Once you're there, you're going to use our promo code CRACK20. You'll get 20% off your order. Plus, you'll get free 14-day pro membership. Trust us, folks. SwingVision. We saw some, we'll say, interesting calls on court over the course of the past weekend. You know what the future to alleviate that's going to be? It's going to be SwingVision. It's going to be their AI technology. It's going to be their on-court affordable line calls that they're going to be able to offer moving forward. That's why we're so excited to be partnered with them. To learn more about SwingVision, again, click the link in the description of the show. Use CRACK20 when you eventually do sign up with them. With all of that said, Jay, let's get into our conversation here. Let's get into this week's episode of The Deciding Point. Let's start with our teams of the week. We've got a top three for all of you listeners. Of course, some teams taking it easy with the national indoors looming, other teams saying, F it. If we weren't live on YouTube, I would have sworn there, but saying, let's go for it. Let's, push the envelope. Let's test ourselves as we look towards Madison. A team that certainly tested itself on the way to Madison and puts forward, I thought, a pretty solid weekend this past weekend, as well as the number 3 team on our list. And that's the Auburn women's tennis team, who have gotten off to a fast start here in 2022. You look what the Tigers have been able to accomplish so far this season. Very quietly ripped off a 7-0 start. And of course, most impressively, through the national kickoff, or the indoor kickoff weekend, they go down to Orlando, 4-3 win over Arizona State. They drop the doubles point, don't win a match in a singles match where they win the first set, drop 4 first sets at 1, 2, 3, and 4 singles, come back to win all of those matches in 3 sets. Follow it up with a solid weekend this past weekend. They beat Georgia Tech 5-2 at home, 7-0 win over Clemson as well. This is an Auburn team, Jay, that brings back all of their starters from last season. They also add Irina Arsenault to the top of their lineup, and she has she has right away contributed at the top of their lineup. This is a sneaky good team. You don't think of them as the pedigree, obviously, of the Virginias, of the, top seeds going into this event. They're in the bottom 8 category, but it's an experienced team getting a first look at the national stage. I would be shocked if this team goes winless in Madison.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well. Just quietly starting really strong to the season, took advantage of probably one of the better regions to be in at kickoff weekend. I think what's been most impressive about this team to date is the strength at 2, 3, and 4 singles positions. So they've gone 20-1 at those respective singles positions. That doesn't include Selin Ovunk at number 1, who, you'd stack up against anyone at number 1, but that does include Georgia transfer Ariana Arsenault, who you mentioned. It also includes Carolyn Ansari. Neither of those two have even lost a dual match to date. So you feel really good about this Auburn team, who has quietly put together a great start to the season, qualified for indoors, and will get a really good test at national indoors with, of course, the SEC schedule looming around the corner.
And another match I should have mentioned, 4-3 over a Furman team that I think is very much in the mix to be a top 25 team all season long, and to beat them to start out the season. And, this was a group that went 14-9 last year and makes the second round of the NCAA tournament. Good win over Oklahoma State in round 1 before they got knocked out. It's a team that, when you bring back all of the starters from a team that was knocking on the doors of the round of 16, and as you mentioned, good selection by them on the kickoff weekend, they go to a UCF team that has had a lot of things go wrong early in this year. But for them to even get to that match, the comeback performance against Arizona State, that's a testament to this team. And yeah, you talk about the new additions as well. I would go beyond that. You mentioned the 20-1 at the 2 through 4 spots. They're 25-2 at 2 through 5. Like, it's not as though they've struggled at that number 5 spot either, having a ton of success in the middle of the lineup. And, again, where's the weak spot? Like, there's not a single glaring point where you say, okay, like, that's where we can attack Auburn. They've got top 100 players in their top 2. And, again, they're solid in doubles thus far. I don't know if they're elite anywhere right now, but they're really good everywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's the recipe for a lot of these teams who made it through kickoff weekend, like in Auburn, who are going to compete against these top teams. You feel like they can compete, they can roll out the balls at 1 through 6. I think that's a testament to this extra year of eligibility, having another class, just being able to have the depth to compete against these top teams. If there's a weak spot right now, maybe it's doubles, right? They have dropped doubles points to start the year, but every single one of these singles positions, you feel like you've got a shot. And they've been battling, right? You mentioned how they came from behind against UCF at home. That's an impressive victory, despite some of the struggles UCF has had. So overall, you feel really good, and you just love the fact that you qualify for national indoors. You get 3, maybe 4 really good matches again before the SEC swing. So this is a team to watch out for, and I think they have sneaky potential to at least get 1 victory for sure at indoors.
And what this team is going to have the opportunity to do as well is rack up some victories, because you look at how the SEC schedule breaks down for them, Jay. 5 out of the last 6 matches, and listen to this gauntlet to end the year. At A&M, at LSU, at South Carolina, who presumably will be healthy by that point of the season, at Florida, Tennessee at home, Georgia at home. Now, before that, they've got the Missouris of the world, Arkansas, Ole Misses, and Alabamas, who are fine, but are matches that this Auburn team will probably be favored in. And we're looking at a world where Auburn could be 14-2, 15-2, something like that, and really rack up victories. And they will be tested and calloused by the time they get to that final 5 of 6 gauntlet. That said, that is a brutal stretch to end the season, Jay. So, again, when you look at this Auburn team, and we do have the benefit of recording this with the National Indoor Draw now being released, Auburn's got NC State. And those are 2 very deep teams, veteran teams. It's an interesting matchup.
It is. You can probably pencil in the loser of that, though, to get a win, right? They probably feel really good about facing Washington, who's faced against Georgia. So actually the 1.5 is probably the threshold for this Auburn team. But yeah, it's an interesting matchup as well, right? Because NC State's another team who has shown that they're strong in every position. They brought in a lot of new additions to make sure that they're strong at 4, 5, 6. So you probably favor NC State in that matchup, given their start to the season, given some of the elite talent, I would say, they have at the top of that lineup. But that's one that you certainly schedule or circle on your sheet for a 4-3, 4-2 type match that could delay some of your programming.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see this Auburn team compete in person, because I haven't had that opportunity, and they will be one certainly we are watching in Madison. With that said, our number 3 team, Auburn, fantastic week for the Tigers as they prepare for Madison. The wins again over, I'm blanking here, Clemson over Georgia Tech. And then the third win, I forget who they played in the doubleheader on Sunday, but shout out to them, a 3-0 weekend. You always give a shout out to. Let's get to our number 2 team. And you're going to notice a theme here in these next 2 schools. It was a good week for the SEC, no doubt about that. And next, I want to go to the University of Florida, a team that has traditionally sat at the top of the women's college tennis rankings, and a team that, to Coach Thornquist's own admission when he came on our Cracked Interviews podcast this offseason, has not had the results they've been looking for the past few years. And you look for this Florida team, for them to get off to the sort of start they have this year. I believe 6-0 now, undefeated as they head towards the national indoors. 2 wins over, a Florida State team that has also had a lot of things go wrong, but 2 wins over a Florida State team nevertheless, and then a very good 4-2 win over Old Dominion this weekend as well. You look for the Florida Gators, their national indoor draw. They match up with Virginia right away. That's a team, again, depth versus depth. You feel like maybe the Gators can hang. And so this is a Florida team that's dangerous headed to Madison, Jay.
Yeah, and that Florida ODU match was the match I wrote about as my match of the week. It was really interesting to me, the narrative of how does ODU bounce back, right, from, or not even bounce back, but just after a Cinderella weekend for kickoff, to go to Gainesville, play Florida. Is Florida back was kind of the question that I was pondering. It has been a tough few years. I was looking at this. They haven't made the round of 16 the last 3 years. Roland has only not made the round of 16 one other time in his career at the University of Florida. So it's been tough sledding. So I thought this was a really good victory for the Gators, and in particular, where they got their victories, right? So as I was thinking about it, ODU's obviously number 3 doubles pairing in the country, and they also slot in at 1 and 2 singles, Sasnskaya and Starbutseva. Apologies if I'm butchering the pronunciation, but they line up at 1 and 2, and they had a really good kickoff weekend, both winning their singles victories. And Florida came out on top, both 1 and 2 singles as well as doubles. And that was a surprise to me. I thought it would be Florida's depth that would pay out against ODU. They also got a win at 5, but thought that was impressive performance from McCartney Kessler at 1 and Alicia Dudney at 2 to get those wins against ODU.
I don't think Kessler's played particularly well to start the season, and that's why I would say that is a very good win for her over a very much informed Startup-Seba, who went undefeated in the kickoff weekend, as did Sasnouskaya. And, you look for Startup-Seba. I'm pretty sure she got a victory over Miami on Sunday, and we'll talk about that match a little bit later. But there were a couple of takeaways. Quickly on the ODU front, they should get a win come the national indoors. And we'll talk about this international indoor preview. It's inevitably going to leak into this show, but ODU Pepperdine is going to be a fun one to watch. Like, it will be fun because you look for this ODU team, to your point in this Florida match, that they lost the top two positions and still found themselves in a position where they could very well win this duel. And, they dropped the doubles as well, though credit to Sasnouskaya, Startup-Seba, they get a 6-3 victory ultimately for the Gators. They get wins from Dundee and Spee at 2, and then Kessler Shelton at 3. But I mean, ODU was competitive everywhere. And, I really think 3 singles, 4 singles, that nucleus of the lineup, they've had a ton of success there to start the season. They have the depth. They're right there. Now, it's a credit to Florida. Briggs looked really good, 1-4 victory over Sophia Johnson, who can absolutely play at the bottom of ODU's lineup. And then, for Jakubovic to get a 2-3 victory as well. That's where I think you're still extraordinarily happy if you're Roland and these Gators is, our depth did still shine through, but then we also got a performance at the top of the lineup. We got a performance in doubles as well. Gators are good. I mean, now, what do you think about the Florida State win? Because certainly that was a tough one for Kessler, who I believe drops the match to Huel in this battle for them. But, everywhere else, Gators this time, Florida State able to field a 3 doubles team, a 6 singles player. And, for the Gators, they win at 3 doubles. They win at 6 singles, albeit in 3 sets. Where are you at with the Gators? Through, it's 6-0, but it hasn't been the toughest schedule to date.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me was that they did get doubles in both of these matches, and they also got singles victories from almost every single player, right? It was some combination of the two between the 2 matches. The only one they didn't get a win at was number 3 singles. So you feel really good about that because you feel like, hey, if we're Florida, we can find victories at 1 through 6. And the recipe against ODU was different than the recipe against Florida State. So that's probably something that they feel comfort in. They probably feel strong about their doubles. So they are going to be coming in with a lot of confidence at indoors. So overall, I mean, I think it's pretty clear to me that Florida is back top 16, right? And so that's a step in the right direction for sure. This solidified that over the weekend. And I think we'll learn it indoors whether or not that's kind of where they are this season or if they're able to take a step further.
Yeah, no, the one thing I will note, bottom of the lineup, something to watch. They played Shelton, Briggs, Spee against ODU. I believe they went Briggs, Shelton, and who I'm trying to think who was that 6 singles option for them, and Berlin, against Florida State. So still experimenting at the bottom of the lineup as well, but already experiencing success. And, you look for these Florida Gators schedule wise, they've got Baylor after the national indoors, but then it's pretty much all SEC the rest of the way. And they're going to get a test right away. They've got Georgia at home, March 11th, at Texas A&M, March 6th as well. Tennessee that same weekend as Georgia. That's a brutal split this year. It seems like Georgia, Tennessee partnered together, and they've got them at home, March 11th, March 13th. They're going to be, this national indoors, big test for the Gators, and we'll get a better pulse, I feel, for them going into that SEC season after it. But it's going to be a fun one. Them versus Virginia, certainly something to keep your eyes on as we head towards Madison. With that in mind, let's move now to our number 1 team on the week, a team that you could argue has been the most impressive team to date, particularly given Michigan's win over Cal today. And yes, I promise listeners and viewers, we will talk about that later on in the show. But you look for this NC State team who, not only loses Anna Rogers and, loses, I'm blanking on a name. I apologize. Remy, excuse me. Thank you. Last season as well, but haven't played with Alana Smith this year. And yet you look for this NC State team. They are undefeated to this point of the season. And, it hasn't been a cupcake schedule for this group. You look for them overall 8-0 and, the wins 4-3 over Princeton, over Ohio State before the kickoff weekend, 4-0 wins over Penn State and Wake Forest during the kickoff weekend. Now 5-2 and 7-0 over Tennessee and South Carolina. They're a top 5 team. And they're a team coming off of an NCAA semifinal performance. And you look at the new additions for this roster. Yes, Priska Nugroho, she is a freshman, but Nell Miller and Sophie Abrams and all of these different faces, they are experienced college tennis hands who are having success right away, fit in like a hand in a glove thus far at NC State. This team, I mean, you look at the seeding for them, number 6 seed, I believe, at the National Indoors, that may even feel a little bit low, Jay.
Yeah, and I actually wish they swapped NC State and Pepperdine just so we wouldn't get a rematch of Pepperdine Cal, but that's a story for a different show. But yeah, just what an impressive start to the season for NC State. You mentioned the teams that they lost. You probably expected them to beat Tennessee and beat South Carolina, but for me, what was so impressive was the way in which they did it. Right. They're again without their number one singles player in Alana Smith, who was a huge contributor in doubles as well. They win doubles against both Tennessee and South Carolina, and then they sweep the top 3 singles positions against both teams. Both teams, you would say, have very strong top 3 singles players. You look at the South Carolina trio of Sarah Hamner, Ayanna Ockley, and Megan Davies. That's a really strong top 3. And on the weekend, they go 6-0. They drop 1 set in those positions. That is extremely impressive. And if you're getting that level of performance from your top of the lineup, you're going to be really tough to beat. And so credit to NC State. I was stunned in the manner in which they beat both of those teams. And shout out to Jada Daniel, right? She was on a 6-match losing streak going into ITA kickoff weekend. She gets wins against Caroline Campagna at Wake Forest, Mertena at Tennessee, and then a straight set win over Sarah Hamner. She's going to be confident going into indoors.
Yeah, and I asked Coach Simon Earnshaw about her. Now, I believe that question cut from the interview you all will hear, but you can hear my extended conversation with Coach Simon Earnshaw tomorrow on the Cracked Interviews podcast feed. You're absolutely right. For Jada Daniel, who lost to Daria Freeman, who lost to Arena Kontos. Now, the team still got 4-3 victories, but she is the returning face and obviously experienced not only at LSU, but part of last year's semifinal run at NC State. She has stepped up and filled the role of the number one singles player while Alana Smith has been absent. And, you're about to hear on the status of Alana Smith in our interview with Coach Earnshaw, but she looks like she can compete with anyone because, of course, when she is playing her best tennis on her front foot, the lefty just so powerful, explosive, moving forward, just the pressure she puts on you. That's what you want at the number one singles position. But again, Nugroho, another outstanding weekend for the NC State freshman. And then in doubles, you mentioned it's not just this weekend. They took the doubles point against Princeton. They took the doubles point against Ohio State. This is now a theme for Coach Earnshaw-led teams, whether you go back to 2020, where I thought they were the second best team at the National Indoors. Check the tape. Super producer Daniel Westhoff will show it to you. We, coming off of it, North Carolina was clearly the best, and then it was just kind of a rat race, and UCLA makes the final, sure, but NC State looked very, very good, and that nucleus, you still see parts of it, whether it be, at the number one doubles position or just, again, the returners have also, last season's 4 and 5 singles players have jumped up to the number 1 and 2 spots, and they filled in adequately, and now they go into the National Indoors tested. It's like this team has already, they're not going to be intimidated by the Pepperdines, by the Texases of the world. I honestly think, yes, they're the 6th seed. They are the favorite to advance over Georgia, in my opinion. They've been, further tested, and, I think this team is still without their top player, and that's just a testament to the talent that they have. Now, again, I'm fresh off of a conversation with Coach Earnshaw, so I know I'm a bit biased here. But I do think this team, I'm not as certain about them at the top as I was last year, but this team is deeper than last year's team.
Yeah, well, I mean, the point you make, right? I mean, Jada Daniel and Renchali played 4 and 5 at the end of last season. They're up to 1 and 2, and I mean, Jada Daniel, she's in the top 10. She could be sneaky contender for getting up there in the rankings with that win over Sarah Hamner. So they have held down those positions. I think, to your point around doubles, I think it's a testament to the program, right? About how good of a doubles team they are as a program, having all of these new additions and still being able to field such solid doubles lineups throughout. they're going to be ready. And you mentioned the potential Georgia match, right? Those are two teams that are very different in terms of battle tested and calloused, right? I mean, Georgia's played like 3 matches, right? And not exactly the toughest competition. NC State's seen several of the teams that are already going to be at indoors. They will not be intimidated, like you said. And this is actually going to be Georgia's first real test, most likely. And you got to favor NC State just having come through the battles they've come through this season so far.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting match. And again, we already talked about Auburn as a first round matchup for this NC State team. Don't mean to take that lightly, but this NC State team has the goods to make another semifinal run at the indoors. And let's not forget, I believe 2019 was the first time this program made the national indoors in program history. They have gone from that to seamlessly in the conversation at the top of women's college tennis. That's a credit to Coach Earnshaw, a credit to the development of these players. NC State, our most impressive team of the week. As such, I wanted to talk to a member of that NC State team. What is clicking so well right now down in Raleigh? I had the opportunity to speak with the man behind the scenes who's running the show, NC State head coach Simon Earnshaw, returning champion here to our Crack Racquets podcast. Now, again, if you want to hear the extended conversation I had, and we went about 50 minutes, talked about all things this season, but then I had to ask him about some of his Armstrong years. Those of you who don't know, built and won multiple championships with Armstrong men's and women's tennis prior to coming to NC State. You want to hear that extended conversation, tune into the Cracked Interviews podcast feed tomorrow. But here today, you get to hear a snippet of my conversation for Coach Earnshaw, asking him about what's clicked thus far this season, how they're feeling as we head towards the national indoors, and of course, when and where will we get to see Alana Smith at any point this season. Westoff, with that in mind, roll the interview. Joining us on the show once again today is a returning champion here to our Cracked Racquets podcast and the head coach of our most impressive team of the past week in women's college tennis. It's my friend, NC State women's head coach Simon Earnshaw. Coach, congratulations on a fantastic week. Wins over Tennessee, South Carolina, and East Carolina. I didn't forget the nightcap. How are you feeling about your team? 8-0 start.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. It's great to be here. Impressive, maybe, because we played a lot of matches. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's great to be back where we can play a lot of matches. We didn't have that opportunity for double headers last season for one reason or another. But yeah, thank you, and yeah, feeling pretty good. I mean, you sort of look at your schedule and have, okay, if this happens, maybe we can arrive at this point in the season unblemished. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah, and again, it's some familiar faces, some new ones, and you look at your team's schedule. I want to ask you about, the Duke and Princeton weekend, but this was your team's first road test because you guys got to host the kickoff weekend as well, and, on Friday you guys go to Tennessee, a team we got to see here on our Cracked Racquets broadcast and watching them. A lot of familiar faces, a lot of talent in that lineup, 1 through 6 as well. And something I noticed your team did, not only this weekend, but throughout the season, you win a doubles point on the road at Tennessee. How critical was that doubles point in that match? To what do you credit the success your team has had in doubles thus far this season?
I mean, I think we've done well in doubles for a while now. I don't want to emphasize that the doubles is like crucial for us because, look, we're not going to win every doubles point. And we're certainly not going to win the doubles point the way we've been winning some of them at the moment. I actually feel like in some of these matches, I told the girls after the doubles against Tennessee that in a way there is no momentum from that type of doubles point because you get up really fast and then there's this lull. You keep talking about the lull in the first set of singles, right? It's almost like becomes an extended lull. I think one of these close doubles points where there's maybe a tie break that then carries over into singles helps you sort of start a little quicker in singles. And I think you could see that in the early going in the singles matches. It was pretty nip and tuck. We were up on free courts and I think down on free courts early against Tennessee. So, I mean, doubles is something we enjoy to play. We have a system. Everybody knows what we're doing. There's no secrets here. I mean, just ask all the other ACC coaches. They know exactly what our doubles looks like. The question is can they do anything about it? And I don't know whether the anticipation of what we're going to do is causing some people some extra stress potentially. We're just out there, we're trying to execute, we're trying to play at the tempo we like to play at, and we have girls that will move forward. We're certainly not scared to shorten rallies and to take the ball out of the air. And, if we can play 1 or 2 bounce doubles, then without serve volleying, because I know there's been some question as to whether that's coming back. Now we're not there with Cressy yet, or men's doubles where we could manage that. But yeah, I mean, it would be awesome if we could give it a go.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's no denying your team has been, over the past 3, 4, 5 seasons, one of the teams in terms of executing on that doubles point. You're right, that NC State system, very well known at this point. Now, of course, you look for your team as we head into this weekend. You're back into the National Indoors Final 16, and, somehow you guys make the NCAA semifinal tournament, semifinals of the NCAA tournament last year. You were not in the final 8 of the National Indoor Field last year. Of course, I was there in 2020 when you guys played an exceptional National Indoor Tournament. I would argue we're the second best team outside of North Carolina at that 2020 event. And so obviously this is a tournament you are familiar with. To be back there this year, what are you looking for your team? What are you looking forward to for the event?
Yeah, I mean, it's our 3rd indoors now. We qualified in Seattle in 2019, and I think I said this on an earlier podcast. We were just happy to be there.
Yeah.
I actually told the girls that the main goal was for us to go to Seattle because I'd never been to Seattle. Yeah. But, we were pretty competitive at that event. We played a close match with Georgia and lost a 4-3 to the host team, Washington. Washington were a top 10 team that year. So, yeah, Seattle, put us in good shape, I think, for the postseason run we had last year, and also the time in Chicago. So, yeah, I mean, we have good memories of the event, and missed it last year. We just weren't in position in January and February to play our best tennis. We don't necessarily have players who've been. I'm trying to think. How would I say? It's not like the girls that we have been in the latter stages of Grand Slams in juniors, or even pushed through later on in San Diego. So in some ways, we're maybe a little bit less experienced in these type of events. And so coming out of that not playing for 9 months, it did affect us. And so we were very choppy and inconsistent. Northwestern played a great match and just got us in the kickoff indoor team. And I want to say they went on and did okay in Stillwater. Yeah, I think they were.
I think they came in 5th.
Yeah, I think so. They won 2 matches. So.
Yeah, there's a marathon that Friday. That Sunday, everything was 4-3. This is so irrelevant, but I'm hoping to. I don't know if I want to repeat it or not, but that's why it didn't end till like 1:30 a.m. because everything went 4-3 that Sunday. Northwestern beating Ohio State, one of those wins.
Yeah, I mean, we were disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it's a fun event. I mean, it's an event that if you have the ability to qualify for it and experience it, it's gonna be very, very productive. It's the only exempt event in college tennis, and we like to play. So if we can get 3 more dates at a minimum, maybe 4, without it charging anything against our 25, then this is fantastic. So yeah, I mean, excited to be back. Looking forward to some really cold weather, and I mean, it's going to be a great experience because we do have quite a different team now than we had back in Chicago.
Yeah, snow in Raleigh may end the day. Snow in Madison, Wisconsin is just a Tuesday. So yeah, expect the cold. In terms of expectations, Alana Smith, yes, no, this event, we're going to see her.
I think a lot of people have seen her on the feed. You'll see her.
Okay.
Look, Alana had an injury in December. Unfortunately, we talked about the 8 hours and then the 0 hours. It occurred in the 0 hour time period. We were not on court with her. She was trying to do some extra conditioning, rolled her ankle. So you think, okay, rolled ankle, not a big deal. Well, 1 in 1,000 times, apparently it becomes a big deal. And we're being very conservative. I mean, we met with the surgeon right before Christmas. There is an option not to have surgery. So we're pursuing that, but it's a long game, and we're not in a rush to get her back. And fortunately, the rest of the girls have stepped up and allowed us to have a little bit of flexibility with that. So she'll be there, but yeah, I didn't enter her. You've probably seen the
I was going to say, we'll see her was the right answer. We will see her certainly. And no, hopefully, again, we get her healthy. But, Coach, again, 8-0 to start the season, I'm sure. I mean, I think we can say this is the ideal start. This is about as perfect as it could have gone for your team, short of having a healthy Alana. So congratulations to you all, and look forward to seeing you all compete in Madison over the course of this weekend.
Thanks, Alex, and look forward to seeing you as well. Cheers.
A huge thank you again to head coach Simon Earnshaw for taking the time to chat. If you want to hear my extended conversation with Coach, head on over to the Cracked Interviews podcast tomorrow. With all of that said, have a quick correction for all of you listeners. We do apologize. In the Auburn graphic, we had an incorrect score listed. Super producer Daniel Westoff has made the correction here. You look for Auburn, 5-2 win over Georgia Tech, 7-0 win over Clemson, 7-0 win over Alabama A&M. That's why he's the best in the business, folks. Give him 2 minutes and he will always find the correct answer. We apologize to Auburn, still our number 3 most impressive teams. Again, those were your accurate score lines. With that said, let's hop around the country and talk about the top scores, the most pressing results we saw over the past 7 days in Division I women's college tennis to keep ourselves in check, because of course we could talk about so many different things. If we can, super producer Daniel Westoff, let's put 10 minutes on the clock today. That's the sort of week it was, Jay. We need a 10-minute clock here to talk about all of these results. With that in mind, super producer, keep us rocking and rolling. So we're going to do 2 5-minute clocks here. That's the word that I'm getting. So we're going to do 2 5-minute clocks. That adds up to 10. We can still do math here at Cracked Racquets. With that in mind, super producer Daniel Westoff, give me the first 5 minutes on the clock and let's rock and roll. Let's start with what happened at the University of Michigan. UNC goes to Ann Arbor, earns a 5-2 victory over the Wolverines. Now, it was a 4-0 victory at the time of clinch, but in Jay's favorite fashion, they end up deciding to play this match out. UNC takes the doubles point. They get wins from Tran at 3, Crawley at 4, Julig at 5. Scotty ultimately earns a 3-set win at 6. Now, Mora at 1 drops a 3-set loss to Kari Miller, who I think has clearly elevated herself into the top 25 players in women's college tennis. You then, again, in a battle at number 6, Michigan, ultimately the straight set victory there for the Wolverines. I think you're pretty happy with that result. And then, of course, you look today, Wolverines pull off the upset. They knock off Cal 5-2. They drop the doubles point, ultimately get straight set victories from Jaden Brown at 3, Andrea Serdan at 4, my little sister, Julia Fliegner, at the number 6 singles position. Of course, they ultimately get 3-set wins at 1 and 2 as well. Now, if you're at Cal, you certainly look at that Katja Wiersholm result, 6-love, 6-1. You feel pretty good about that. Heading into the indoors. Sorry, a minute 15 on Michigan from me. It was inevitable. Take it away, Jay.
Well, the win over Cal today is super impressive, right? 5 singles victories against Cal, after dropping the doubles point. So really impressive from them. The UNC match was interesting. I think that win at 1 and 6 is kind of going to be the recipe against UNC if you're going to knock them off. I think they're extremely strong in doubles, and that 2 through 5 feels like really tough to get a point against. So it was interesting to see them. That was really North Carolina's first big test of the season, get prepared for indoors. So, particularly after Michigan knocks off Cal, you're thinking, all right, UNC is still looking really strong to potentially defend their indoor title.
I think that's a great takeaway as well. It's that Michigan not only plays UNC close, but then goes on to beat this Cal team. It also speaks to the fact that's how good ODU is. They're right there in the mix, right? Because ODU knocks off Ole Miss, who knocks off Michigan 4-3. And it's just, there's a nice little cluster of teams there that are all super talented on the right day in the right conditions, can knock off any opponent. We saw Cal do that to Pepperdine in the first weekend of the season. We see Michigan now do that to Cal here this weekend. It's a big win for the Wolverines, big win for the Big Ten as well, because Ohio State and Michigan going to play a couple of matches, obviously Northwestern as well in the mix there. If any of those teams beat Michigan, now you get the indirect points from Michigan's win over Cal. Big win for the Big Ten, particularly given Ohio State is the only Big Ten representative at the indoors outside of Wisconsin this year. Obviously, Wisconsin there as well. Hopefully, both teams are in victories for the conference, but certainly now you locked in one top 10 win if you are the Wolverines. And again, given the Buckeyes, Duke, NC State trip, good for the conference. That's long enough on what happened in Ann Arbor. Let's move on now. Speaking of Pepperdine, they get their first big win of the season, drop the doubles point, ultimately 5-2 though over UCLA. UCLA now, I believe, 2-3 on the season, which is just crazy to say out loud. But you look for Pepperdine, new lineup. Fukuda win at 1 singles. Lisa Czar win at 2 singles. Pashkaleva back in the lineup. She wins at 4. Brodus starting to look like the talented freshman we all knew she could be. 2-0 victory at that number 6 singles spot. Now, Janice Chen, Vicky Flores still looking to find their footing in Pepperdine, and credit to Waggle and Hans for UCLA getting victories there. How are you feeling about the Waves as we look towards national indoors?
Yeah, I was really surprised they dropped doubles. They've actually looked really strong in doubles to start. UCLA was without Alicia Bolton, so you felt like Pepperdine should get doubles, and they didn't. Credit to them for getting enough singles wins. So that was a surprise to me. And you mentioned Flores and Chen, looking for them to find their form, but otherwise good for Pepperdine to get that under their belt. Because they'll head to indoors as a non-indoor team and hoping to get a few more victories.
Yeah, and of course, by the way, UNC first round match against Ohio State at the national indoors. You look for Pepperdine, their first match against a battle-tested ODU team, who I would argue has played the tougher schedule thus far to date, but good win for the Waves. 2 seconds on UCLA. Where are we with them? Is top 16 out? Not yet.
Like potential?
Yeah, are they still have host region in play, correct?
It's going to be tough to get the victories.
It's hard.
You go 9 deep to get your ranked wins at the end of the season. And, they have to beat Stanford, Cal,
USC.
They
exactly. Play Pepperdine again. They have to beat Pepperdine. They have to win now. Now the margin for error has evaporated for these Bruins, because especially, again, they don't get the 3 opportunities minimum this weekend at the national indoors. With that said, Westhoff, give me that second 5 minutes on the clock. Let's keep rolling through these results. ODU, brutally close weekend in Florida. Despite the losses, I still think they get a passing grade. That 4-2 loss we mentioned to Florida, tough 4-3 loss on the road at Miami. Now, credit to Miami. They take the doubles point. Ultimately, they get wins at the numbers, I believe, 6, number 6 position, number 2 singles position. Then they get the clinch from Isabella Fenning, 6-4 in the third at 3. Man, ODU goes on the road. 4-2 against Florida in a match that was essentially 4-3 in feeling. 4-3 against Miami. They're a top 25 team. They're in the hunt this season for a Sweet 16 bid. I actually think this tells us more about Miami, and it just confirms what we knew about ODU.
Couldn't agree more. Told us a lot about Miami. They had a tough draw facing USC in the first round. They're clearly still top 20, top 25 team. Look, these are the reasons why you go on the road in Florida to play these sorts of matches against Florida, against Miami. Great showing from ODU. Don't feel any worse about them. They've solidified themselves as a top 25 team.
I agree with you. Let's move on. Baylor, Texas, 4-2 Texas. They drop the doubles point, ultimately get wins at the number 1, 2, 4, and 5 singles positions. Where are you at with the Longhorns? They're the number 1 seed at this national indoors.
Yeah, and they come in still pretty untested, right? We talked about Georgia earlier, not having many matches. Feels like Texas doesn't either. This was kind of their first real test. Surprising to drop doubles in Austin. Really surprised to see Shavathappan drop that match. I was expecting a big jump from her sophomore year. I think if you're the Longhorns, the redeeming takeaway here is Vivian Ovrutsky won fairly easily as the January edition freshman. And then Zainalova, another freshman, she rebounded after dropping her first set. So you like to see that sort of fight back from freshmen. Indoors will tell us a lot about this team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'd also say Baylor very much in that Miami ODU hunt for those 14, 15, 16 seeds. That's what we learned about the Bears this weekend, but good win for Texas. UVA 5-2 over UCF. They ended up taking the doubles point. No Emma Navarro in this match. Stravinsky gets a win at 1, though. Subash 3-set win at 2. They get wins at 5 and 6 as well. Good win, bad win. Where are you at again? Because this UCF team's had a lot of weird things happen.
They have, but that top of the lineup is still strong. I think this just reaffirms the fact that Stravinsky and Subash are legit at 1 and 2, and they're even more legit at 2 and 3. So that's incredibly strong. Just to casually not have your number one because she's making the semifinals of the 60K, that's a high class problem for this UVA team. They'll feel really confident going into indoors.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment. Well, then with that said, I've got some additional results for you. I know you've got some for me. Let's just alternate here. I've got Wake Forest 4-3 over South Carolina. You look for the Deacons for them to, get the doubles point, and then ultimately Wake Forest ends up getting victories, number 3 singles, number 5 singles, number 6 singles as well. This Wake Forest team, I'm not quite sure they're number 16 yet, but they're probably 22, 20. Like they're in the mix for that top 25 spot right now. And, again, in the ACC, if you can get a win over a Duke, if you can get a win over a Miami or, God willing, a win over a UNC, you're going to be in a mix from a rankings perspective.
Yeah, absolutely right. The ACC is so deep. Wake Forest contributes to that depth. And so they've started out strong. They've looked really good in their matches, and that was a good win for them. The one other one I'll add from the ACC, and I've got one more for you, is Georgia Tech over Northwestern.
Yep, 4-3. That's 4-3. Much needed.
Literally.
Yeah.
Words on my page, much needed for the Yellow Jackets just to find some wins. They've had a tough go of it. So, and that's a good team. Northwestern is always going to be strong. So they'll feel good about that one.
Yeah. I've got 2 more for you. Duke over Furman 6-1. That's a nice bounce back for the Blue Devils, who take the doubles point, get wins from Drummy, Beck, Billiken, Coleman, Barankova. No Kelly Chen in the lineup for them in singles nor doubles, but still, again, that's a nice bounce back for the Devils after obviously the disappointing, still very well played match, but disappointing loss to Oklahoma.
Yeah. That Furman team is good. We've talked about them. So that was a good showing from Duke. They're going to be a little sad this weekend not to be at National Indoors. So, they'll be happy to be at least riding on a win.
Yeah. All right. I've got one more for you, but give me your last.
All right. My last one is San Jose State defeating Cal State Fullerton 4-3, came down to number 2 singles, 6-3, 1-6, 7-6, 7-5 in the breaker. Senior from Spain, Alba Galindo, gets the clinch. Big non-conference win for the San Jose State Spartans.
I like it. I'm in favor. My last one, 5-2 Kansas over Arkansas. I just think, again, NCAA tournament-wise, keep an eye on that win. That's a nice win for the Jayhawks over, I think, a soon-to-be on the rise Razorback program. But those are your biggest results from the past week in Division I women's college tennis. Again, of course, national indoors looming as well. Before we get to our conversation on the indoors, before we get to our conversation of what this week's Cracked Racquets rankings look like, I want to take one more moment to talk to you listeners about what our friends at SwingVision are doing. Now, again, we are immensely grateful for the support and so excited for this partnership with SwingVision moving forward. Because we believe they are the future in terms of what's going to be capable to document your tennis game moving forward, what's going to be capable from a technology standpoint. You set up a SwingVision camera, you're going to have automated line calling on the court you're competing in. And certainly in college tennis, that is something coaches, players, fans would all look forward to down the road. And look, we're really excited to be partnered with them moving forward. You can learn more about them by clicking on the link in the description to this episode. Again, you use our promo crack $20 discount plus a 14-day pro trial. Shout out to our friends at SwingVision for their continued support of us here at Cracked Racquets, presenting partners here of the Deciding Point. With that in mind, let's talk about the ITA Women's National Indoors. And let's talk first. I want to talk about our broadcast. Again, we are going to be here Friday through Monday, each and every day, of this event, 4-day event, happening in Madison. Of course, you'll have 4 matches a day on Friday, on Saturday, on Sunday. I imagine those matches are going to start 10 a.m. Central Time, so probably 11 a.m. Eastern for all of you listeners. It's going to be myself and Mike Cation, of course, on the call here for the indoors, and he'll be steering the ship. I'll be providing that color analysis. We'll have Westoff on the 1s and 2s. We'll have split screen function. We'll have all the sound effects, all the fun things that we incorporate here on our Cracked Racquets broadcast. Of course, it'll all be live on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel so that you all can send in your questions, your comments. I expect to see that John Parsons name creeping up in conversation after conversation. I love that when Westoff sends your comments, he still sends it as John Parsons, as if you're some random out there, and it's like, that's Jay, and it's like he knows it's Jay as well. But again, everyone going to be able to interact with us as well. We're going to have a preview of the event. We'll break down the 8 round of 16 matches. We'll come up with a fun format to be efficient about it, Jay, but we'll either have that for you Thursday or, of course, Friday morning before all of the action begins. Try to have that for you Thursday so that you guys have some time to consume it all. That's just going to be a podcast, not going to be a live show. Obviously, we've got our men's deciding point episode Thursday night. Don't want to kill Westoff with 3 live shows plus a 4-day broadcast, because it certainly would, and he can chime in and say yes, it would if he'd like to. But again, that's our plan for the national indoors. Of course, we'll have podcasts recapping all the action every day. We'll try to talk to as many coaches, players as we can throughout the action as well. Extraordinarily excited for that national indoor event to begin. And with that in mind, if we can, super producer Daniel Westoff, can you throw up the graphic here for what this national indoor draw has looked like? As today we learned what the draw was going to be for the Division I event. Of course, it's top 8 seeds and then randomized after that for the Division I women's national indoors. Jay giving me a shake of the head there. I might not have gotten it exactly right. There are some rules that are in place. I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to have a conference in conference matchup. And, again, all of that said, here are the matchups. Number 1 seed, Texas, they're taking on USC. Number 8 seed, Oklahoma, taking on Wisconsin. You've got number 5 seed, Pepperdine, taking on Old Dominion. Number 4 seed, Cal, taking on A&M. Bottom half of the draw, your 3 seeds, Georgia Bulldogs. Interesting. They take on Washington. 6, NC State, Auburn. Virginia coming in at number 7, despite the win over Stanford. They're taking on the Florida Gators. And then your number 2 seeds and back-to-back defending champions, UNC Tar Heels. Tricky first matchup against a talented and deep Ohio State team. We'll break it down on the show in depth, Jay, but give me your immediate reaction.
3 immediate reactions. 1, I feel like Oklahoma's the loser of this draw.
Okay.
Because 1, they're going to get a win over Wisconsin. Then they're going to have to play Texas, who they're just going to see so many times this year. And potentially if they lose that, then they get to face the loser of Pepperdine, Cal, or A&M. They could come out of here 1 and 2 with that 1 match being Wisconsin, and that's not the ideal situation. So not a great draw for Oklahoma, just in terms of how all the calculus works out. Second reaction is would have loved to see Pepperdine NC State switched to avoid a potential Pepperdine Cal rematch. Again, another teams that will see each other throughout the season. Why not throw Pepperdine on the other half? And then lastly, I think the UNC, Ohio State, Virginia, Florida is by far the toughest quadrant of this draw. I mean, those are 4 teams that, could go deep here. And Virginia feels underranked at 7. So those are my 3 immediate takeaways.
No, I'd like that. What I would add to it is the flip side. If you're Coach Cohen in Oklahoma, you're going to get to see Texas so many times this year. And so let's get a loss or a win out of the way early. Let's get that first one in now. We see each other. We can assess the opponent, get a feel for what those lineups look like. It's just really hard to beat a team 3-4 times in a given season. So if you're Oklahoma, this is your first shot at the defending Big 12 champions. I think for USC, they've kind of got the strength to match up top, right? With Cayetano and Ewing against this Texas team. So that's an interesting one. That's an interesting matchup for what is a feeling like a younger and younger Texas team at the bottom of the lineup than we anticipated. I would have loved the Pepperdine Cal switch. I agree with you. I also think you should probably switch the seeds for Georgia and NC State, just given the schedules they've played to date. unintentional rhyme there, but that's also a rematch of an NCAA matchup between those two teams in the quarterfinals, where NC State ends up getting Georgia. And boy, are they probably licking their chops to get another look at the Wolfpack as well. So it's a loaded draw. I mean, it's a really fun one. There's a lot of permutations, and you're right.
Yeah.
That top right quarter, UNCO Ohio State could be a semifinal, just as likely as it is a round of 16. And Virginia, Florida, boy, there's going to be one of those four teams is going to be 0-2 at some point of this event. One of those four teams is going into Sunday 0-2. That's crazy. God help whomever loses between likely Auburn and Washington or whatever it is, and they face a hungry last team in that final match. But it's going to be a really, really fun weekend of action. And again, all of that action going to be covered here on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. We hope you'll tune in at some point throughout the weekend, Friday through Monday. Myself, Mike Cation, super producer Daniel Westoff, Jay in the comments as well. So come hang out with us over the course of those 4 days. Of course, with that said, just one thing left for us to do, our Cracked Racquets Week 3 Top 10 rankings. Of course, this is the last edition before we have the National Indoors. These rankings also finished before my Wolverines knocked off Cal. Now, I should have done a better job anticipating success because that's what Wolverines do. I apologize, Wolverine Nation, for that fact. You look as of right now, coming into the week, pre-Cal, we had Texas number 1. Undefeated. They've earned that right. Defending NCAA champions. UNC number 2, 5-2 win over Michigan. That is certainly appreciated in value over the past 2 hours. Cal number 3, whoopsies. NC State 4, Virginia 5, Oklahoma 6, Pepperdine, Georgia right now tied at 7, Texas A&M 9, Ohio State 10. Jay, tell me what I screwed up in.
I still have a hard time punishing Duke over Ohio State, given they have the head-to-head victory. Overall, obviously, we've learned more about Cal, but prior to that, that felt correct. I think clearly the ITA has Georgia much higher than we do, which is a little surprising given, we're a few weeks into the season and they just haven't played a lot. So overall, it's interesting. I'm treating these as the official rankings. There are no ITA rankings this week because of indoors. So this is the de facto ranking for me. So I feel like we got it right.
Yeah, I like that. I probably moved Cal down. Probably below Oklahoma. I'd probably move them down to 6, right above that Pepperdine Georgia duo, because I'm not going to punish that Michigan loss. Michigan's played really well. Michigan is a top 16 team, or one that's in the mix, I should say, for a top 16 seed come the end of the season. They're still very, very young, and I think just going to get better throughout the course of this year. I mean, what has Georgia done to validate being number 3? Like, it to me, that's the thing. It's like we didn't get to see them play UNC. Had they beaten them, yeah, then you can say it for sure. This team is, of course, perennially good, and we have them in our top 10. We're not disrespecting Georgia, but there's a difference between being the number 3 seed and drawing Washington and being the number 7 seed and drawing Florida. And I would argue Virginia's win over Stanford is the most impressive team either team has done.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. 3
and then the win over UCF is probably the second most impressive thing.
Yeah, exactly. Without Navarro. So, Georgia very high on the strength of a very talented roster for sure. But even that talent is still extremely untested, right? That talent is based off of Mel Riasco, who's a freshman, Vid Minova, who arrived 2-3 weeks ago to Athens, a few other freshmen on the roster. So it's very talented. It's untested, and we haven't even seen it this year. So, at this point, I don't know how you keep them that high.
Can I ask you one more rankings question, not related to the top 10?
Sure.
Is UCLA in your top 25?
So they fell out this week.
They fell out of mine as well.
Yeah, I did have them in the top 25 last week, but they fell out this week.
It's weird. And did you have the men in the top 25?
Well, I don't do the men top 25.
You do for Cracked Racquets. Did I not ask you for your top 25 or your top 10 this week?
So UCLA is not my top 10.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I would have asked you for your top 25. That's a good point. All right. That's an unforced error by me. I apologize. Put that in a secondary corrections, Westoff. Secondary corrections that we don't have, Jay. Would you put them in your top 25, top of your head?
No. I was there for the Stanford UCLA match. And
yeah. Yeah. Enough said.
Yeah. exactly.
All right. I like it. By the way, any takeaways from the grounds of the matches you've seen? This is a random note here as we close today's show.
Stanford looks really good. I mean, that Stanford USC match, which I'm
Stanford
sure you
men, to clarify here.
Yeah, Stanford men. Yeah, I haven't seen the women live, but I'm sure we'll talk about the Stanford USC match. Those two teams are on different tiers, and that was very clear in seeing them play live, and that is without Tristan Boyer of Stanford. So that told me a lot about the talent of that Stanford team, and also told me a lot about the weaknesses of the USC team.
No, that's interesting to hear. Well, with all of that said, again, Jay's going to be joining me later this week for a national indoor draw preview. We'll break down all of the matchups, talk about the lineup decisions we're looking for most closely as well as we kick off our coverage of the 2022 National Indoor Championships. Of course, again, all of the coverage Friday through Monday available on our Crack Rackets YouTube channel. We'll also be back here Thursday night for our men's edition of The Deciding Point. Chris Halliors, Matt Stakowiak going to join me then. Hopefully all of you listeners, viewers will join us as well. A shout out to super producer Daniel Westoff on the ones and twos, has turned this into a television production. So immensely grateful for his endless work and his amazing talent as well. And a shout out to our friends at SwingVision for their continued support. To learn more about them, just click on the link in the podcast description. With all of that said, any final thoughts, Jay, before we wrap this week's edition of the show?
I'm excited for Thursday. I hope you guys bring some spice. I know we're a live show. We've got the sponsors running, but it should be spicy. It deserves it. I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be a spicy Thursday, no doubt about that. I'm afraid Matt's going to yell at me like in advance. I already can feel his anger brewing and just like getting ready. But with all of that said, for my fantastic co-host, John J. Parsons, our super producer, Daniel Westoff, our friends at SwingVision, and from all of us here at both Cracked Rackets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. You know what we say, Jay.
Hey, great shot.
And we will see you all on Thursday. Thanks, everyone.